Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome once again. It's Syracuse basketball postgame alongside my friend and colleague Mike Curtis. I'm Brent Axe. This is presented by our friends at Krause Health. And Mike, the season is over. At least the regular season is over. It's all postseason from here on out for Syracuse, and the Orange go in where they've been the past few years. Mike, death, taxes, and Syracuse on the bubble. That's just the way it's going to be. Big win for sure for Syracuse over Clemson tonight. 64-54 is the final score at the Carrier Dome. Alan Griffin with a huge game for the Orange. 22 points, 19 of those points come in the second half of this game. Welcome from wherever you are watching us tonight. We really appreciate it. And what an impressive performance, Mike. I mean, that Monday game against North Carolina, as we discussed, you could kind of look at it and say, Carolina, kind of shot themselves in the foot in a lot of different ways. This was not a pretty game to start. It looked like, the rec league that you and I would play in the first half, just bricks everywhere. But things settled down in the second half. But this was as impressive a performance, as impressive a performance for Syracuse as we have seen, particularly in the second half, Mike, and particularly on defense.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Brent, but I'll get buckets in the rec league.
Not this guy. Maybe that guy, not this guy.
But no, you're right. Like it was a slow start. I think both teams went at least 4 minutes in the first half without scoring at some point. And you just thought that it was gonna be slow throughout the rest of the game. But Alan Griffin, man, once he came out of that second half, it was like he was a different player. And I texted this to one of our colleagues. I said, if Alan Griffin had been playing like this all season, Syracuse would not be on the bubble.
No, not at all. Jim Boeheim had a quip there at his post-game press conference that maybe if he had played Jesse and Kadari more, they'd be 22-2 at this point, right? But it was a game where Syracuse had to go smaller, and Jesse Edwards didn't get in. Griffin was terrific, 22 points, 10 rebounds, 3 block shots. The fact that he's the leading shot blocker on this team just continues to be a really interesting stat for Syracuse. And, Mike, this team is the walking wounded. You have Quincy Guerrier gutting through a knee injury. You've got Kadari Richmond, who only played 18 minutes tonight, gutting through a knee injury. Joe Girard, I think, gave Syracuse some quality minutes tonight, as we'll discuss. And then we find out tonight that Marek Dolzaj broke a finger. Now, it was on his non-shooting hand, but still, he's out there playing with a fractured finger, and he gets 8 rebounds. And that was such a big reason for this win for Syracuse tonight. They got outboarded the first time around 42-25. This time Syracuse wins the rebounding battle. And just the elements that happened in the first game were not there this time around. Clemson dominated the first half. Syracuse actually shot pretty poorly in that game too in the first half, 3 of 25. But this time both teams shot poorly in the first half, and the Orange just went on a roll in the second half, played much, much better defense in this one. Now, what were they saying in the Clemson locker room after this one, Mike?
Yeah, Brad Brownell pretty much focused on the fact that the zone pretty much annoyed his team all night. And the fact that they couldn't hit 2-pointers, he really stressed the fact that they couldn't hit their inside shots, especially there in the first half. He said they didn't have a guy that they could go to consistently that was kind of comfortable taking those shots. And if they would have played like they played in the second half, it probably would have been a different game because they were able to make a healthy amount of 3-pointers tonight, but they just couldn't come back from that first half that they had.
This is how bad it was in the first half, by the way. The halftime score was 25-22. Syracuse shot 7 of 28. Clemson shot 7 of 31. So both teams at 25% or below. Clemson was 4 of 16 from three-point range. Syracuse was 5 of 18 from three-point range. It's actually not bad. Syracuse out-rebounded Clemson in the first half, 24-22. Mike, there was that one sequence where Syracuse got like 4 offensive rebounds in a row, and it ends up Joe Girard hits a three-pointer at the end of that. But it just kind of showed you how it was Syracuse's night in a lot of ways there. So that's how it ended up in the first half. Here's how it ends up total. Syracuse shoots 37%. That's 21 of 56. Clemson was 20 of 59. The Orange and the Tigers both at 10 3-pointers, 10 of 32 for Syracuse, 10 of 29 So the shooting was pretty even, but Syracuse edges Clemson on the boards 39-37. They actually won points in the paint in this game as well, which is a surprise to hear. That final total was 20-14. And, Syracuse had 14 assists on the night. They cut back on the turnovers. That was an issue in the first game. Look, it was just a good overall team effort for Syracuse. And we mentioned a couple of the standouts there, Mike, but you really go through it. In my column, I always have the sunny side and the dark side, kind of what went well and what did not. The dark side is not going to be very busy tonight. This was a good top to bottom all around defensive effort for Syracuse. And it was important, Mike, because it was a contrast from the Monday game. Carolina likes to run and gun a little bit, get up and down the court. It's more of a free-flowing game. Clemson likes to grind. This was, you would think, their type of basketball game. And Syracuse was able to change styles and hang in there and go blow for blow with one of the better, more physical teams in the league, who, by the way, came in tonight having won 5 straight games.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how you want to close your regular season, especially against an opponent that blew you out the last time that you guys played. And one thing that Brad Burnout actually touched on again in his presser, he said that it was, I haven't heard this since the beginning of the year. He said it was weird playing in the Carrier Dome without those 30,000 fans. So he had to kind of tell his guys that they had to create their own energy. And he doesn't think that he got through to them, obviously, but it's pretty interesting that they've almost played an entire season, and that's something that's still kind of affecting them at this point.
North Carolina, could tell was off. Their energy wasn't there. Syracuse finishes 13-1 at the Carrier Dome this season. I think there was not only something to the lack of energy and fans, Mike, it's a different depth perception. As an ace shooter yourself, you would know, right? Its depth perception is weird when there's not fans there, and practicing in the dome, playing in the dome. Syracuse, had their bad shooting days throughout the season as well, had some bad first halves, but obviously more used to playing in an empty Carrier Dome. I think there was something to that this year with the visiting teams coming in, and Syracuse took care of business. So we'll get into the NCAA tournament ramifications, and Syracuse still has some work to do here for sure. Root for NC State tonight. We're live while NC State's playing, so we'll see what the results of that game are. If they beat Notre Dame, that should move up to a quad 1 win for Syracuse. But, Mike, just a couple individual numbers to throw out there. We mentioned Griffin, 22 points. He was 6 of 12 from three-point range with 10 rebounds on the night. Quincy Guerrier, 8 points and 9 rebounds. He took a few threes early and luckily backed off that because he just wasn't shooting well from there. Tonight he's 0 for 4 from three-point range, but fought through that knee injury to get some rebounds and provide an inside presence for the Orange. Look, shout out to Joe Girard. We've been pretty hard on him as of late. Kadari Richmond has kind of stolen the show from him, but 7.7 assists on the night, Mike. You need Joe Girard to contribute. Jim Boeheim said it all year, especially with Kadari not 100% right now. And Joe did come out and run the offense a little bit. He had a couple defensive lags there that allowed Clemson to hit some threes. But look, you got 7 points and 7 assists out of Girard. You'll take that.
Absolutely. And that's what you want from Girard. You want him to come in and be the best player that he can be. No matter if that's short spurts or the time just that he has on the floor. You want him to come in, make plays, get his teammates involved, make shots, make his free throws. And if he does that, you'll be in pretty good shape. Like you said, he had a couple turnovers, defensive lapses. And once Kadari came in after that stretch in the second half, I mean, you could tell the game flipped again. He got to the free throw line, made a couple shots. He was able to be that bruiser that Syracuse needed, even though he was hurt.
Exactly. It was a good balance between those two tonight. He played 18 minutes on the night. I believe Girard was pretty similar to that. Let's see. Richmond played 18 and Girard had 23. So pretty even there. And boy, Buddy Boeheim tonight, he scored 17 points. He did hit a couple of threes, but Mike, he was working in the paint tonight. And we've seen that throughout the season. And sometimes kind of like, Buddy, I'm not so sure about that. But against, a big physical Clemson team, Buddy's 6'6", take it in the paint, see what you can get. And it was working for him tonight.
Yeah. From my end, it looked like Buddy had a quiet game. He only made 2 from 10 for 3. That's probably why we're so used to him make
Exactly.
5 and 6 3-pointers nowadays, especially after that UNC game. So he definitely was quiet from beyond the arc, but he definitely did a good job of getting his points inside.
By the way, 5 rebounds for him. So you had Dolezaj with 8 rebounds, Griffin with 10 rebounds, Guerrier with 9, Buddy with 5. It was a balanced effort on the boards. Look, Robert Braswell, I think, played well in his only 8 or 9 minutes of action. One guy who really didn't get a lot of run tonight, and Boeheim said after the game, the reason was they wanted to go a bit smaller tonight, was Jesse Edwards. The not ready Jesse Edwards, right? We have to put that disclaimer with Jesse, it feels like, when we talk about him. So now it's bubble time, baby. And Syracuse has to kind of sit and wait for the ACC tournament. There was a little discussion about maybe adding a game, Mike. Jim was asked about that afterwards. I believe there was another rescheduling today. If I'm not mistaken, Georgia Tech was involved with one. And could that put another game on Syracuse's schedule? Look, they just played 3 games in 5 days. They're beat up. I don't think it's a good idea for Syracuse to play another game. Will one game really be the difference between a tournament team or not? They still have to do damage in the ACC tournament, and I think they'd be wise to kind of lay low a little bit, get Kadari and Quincy and Marek some rest and kind of lay low for a little bit and try and do your damage in the ACC tournament. But they're squarely back on the bubble now, and it just really depends on if you're more of a Jerry Palm guy or a Joe Lenardi guy or whoever your favorite bracketologist is. You just kind of have to sit and wait and see if Syracuse's resume is going to be good enough.
Yeah, I agree with you there. No need to add another regular season game that pretty much won't mean anything significant. And you got a couple guys that are bruised. Getting that rest will be vital, especially since they're probably not slated to play again till next Wednesday. So that's a whole week off. I mean, any basketball team at this time of the season needs a week off. So definitely going to be interesting to see how they perform and who they're matched up with, which seed they get going into the ACC tournament.
So I think going into tonight, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they were slated to be the 8 seed and would play Duke, the 9 seed. And the winner of that game would get Florida State the next day. But, given some other games and some other things, that's going to move. That bracket's probably going to change for Syracuse. They did clinch a first round bye, so they'll play Wednesday. So we'll see how the bracket plays out at this point for the Orange. And we're kind of used to this around here the past 4 or 5 years, just sweating it out through the ACC tournament and then until Selection Sunday. It's a weird tournament this year. There's actually going to be standby teams for the tournament in case anybody has to bow out because of COVID or whatever the case may be. And one way or the other, it just feels like Syracuse could play their way into this thing. So appreciate everybody coming by. Let's react to some of your comments out there in Facebook and YouTube land. And everybody excited about the win, and a few people, Mike, saying they're in with the tournament. Big wins all around, a lot of woos and happy people. Chris noting that he watched this game from Sacramento. Defense was outstanding for the Orange tonight. And in the last couple of games, gives compliments to Gerard, spelling out Richmond and Griffin. Buddy able to carry the team, and noted what we brought up there, Mike, 13-1 at home for Syracuse, 2-7 on the road. So now how do you do on neutral territory? And Mike, historically, Syracuse has not played well in the ACC tournament. They played a great game against North Carolina last year, and then the whole world shut down. So we'll see what they do in Greensboro this time around.
Yeah, I saw a comment from John Lammers. He said 7 turnovers, and it looks like that's what Syracuse had total. That's a pretty good output if you're Syracuse,
especially against Clemson.
Taking care of the ball. That's what you got to do in order to be successful.
Dustin checks in from Kentucky and says a well-played game on both offense and defense, and great to see us shut down Sims. There was a couple of guys, Mike. You had Sims, who didn't have his typical game. Trapp had 11 assists the last time these two played, and Nick Holden had 4 3-pointers by the time you had the opportunity to sip a couple of sips from your adult beverage, right? Like, I think by the first TV timeout in the last game, that guy was firing from threes, and he was not a factor tonight. So for Syracuse to really put a dent in the big performers for Clemson tonight was huge. And it was all about Clemson and their defense, but man, timing is everything in life, Mike. The last 2 games, Syracuse's defense has been pretty good. And look, I remember writing on Saturday after the game that this just didn't have the look and the feel of an NCAA tournament team. And I meant it then. But here we are just a few days later. They're at least playing like a team that deserves to be in the tournament. The energy, the way that they've rallied around the injuries and taken on all challengers here. We'll see what basically sitting out a week will do to that. All momentum can change, and they've got to prove that they can win in neutral territory here. But this just looks like a completely different team in the past couple of days.
Yeah, Brownell also said the effort from Syracuse was just tremendous. And the fact they were able to disrupt them on the inside and limit those 2-pointers, they were also able to kind of ease up and get on that 3-point line and close out on those shooters. If you look, Clemson didn't have a lot of uncontested shots from the 3-point line. They were hoisting up a lot of contested threes.
There was a lot of open shots missed by both teams in the first half, but once we got into the second half and both teams kind of got going at least somewhat offensively, because there was no offense in the first half, but man, Griffin, he hit 2 or 3 of those threes with a hand in his face. There was that one step back three he had in the corner where this time Syracuse got the favorable bounce off the rim. And, it was brought up by Jim Boeheim in the postgame press conference afterward. I thought he made an interesting point about Griffin, and he actually said this about Buddy too, that sometimes shooters shoot just for the sake of it. But he said Griffin had a good release tonight and took good shots. And you can just see it when a shooter's feeling it, that even when there's a hand in their face, there's a defender there, that they're going to take it. Griffin's done that a bunch this year. He just kind of feels like he's got to take shots in certain situations. But of the 12 3-pointers he took, Mike, I can't remember one being a bad shot, maybe 1 or 2. But for the most part, he took smart shots tonight, and that was key.
Yeah, and he had every right to take bad shots the way he was shooting them. I remember there was one play where I thought I think it was after he had made his third one in a row. I thought he was definitely going to take another one, and he ended up driving to the rack for a layup. So that kind of shows the type of mentality he has. Like, just because he has the hot hand, he doesn't have to take another shot. He can go get the easier shot.
So Jason asks here in the comments, and this is a good point to reiterate, especially with how we're going to be tracking this over the next few days. Clemson is not a quad 1 win. So this is how the quad system works, just for a reminder. If you beat a team in the NCAA net rankings that's ranked between 1 and 30 at home, 1 and 50 on a neutral court, which we'll keep an eye on in the ACC tournament, or between 1 and 75 on the road, that qualifies as a quad 1 win. So since this was at home, Clemson in the net rankings is not, I'll look it up while we're talking about it here, Mike, but they don't fall into that category. So this is not a quad 1 win, but that's why I brought it up with NC State a little earlier. If they beat Notre Dame tonight, I would think so. They're 76 in the net ranking as of now. They'll slip up a couple of spots, I would think. That becomes a quad 1 win for Syracuse. But to answer your question, no, tonight is not a quad 1 situation for Syracuse, but a good win nonetheless, and a win that's going to get a lot of people's attention, Mike. I mean, Clemson had won 5 straight, one of the better teams in the ACC coming into this thing.
Yeah, Brent, so interesting how the quad system works. Like yesterday, Syracuse didn't even play, and within a couple hours, I think within a couple hours, they had a quad 1 win, and then the next minute they didn't. So
right.
It just
That's
goes
exactly right.
It just goes to show that it can change at any moment because of anything.
By the way, they just missed out on a quad 1 win in tonight's scenario because Clemson was 33rd in the net rankings coming in. If they were a top 30 team, then Syracuse would get credit for a quad 1 win tonight. And who knows, maybe Clemson will bump up a couple of spots and this could become a quad 1 win the way these things go. It's, I wasn't good at math in high school, Mike, so figuring out net rankings and all this stuff, not my strong suit, but just going to have to keep refreshing that page a lot over the next week and see how things go and bookmark Lenardi and Palm and the bracket matrix and all these things. And, of course, we'll have you covered here on syracuse.com to let you know where Syracuse stands. Matt says, agree with the thought of not adding a game, get healthy, and go all out in the ACC tournament to get that. All right, so let's try and guess, Mike. How many wins in the ACC tournament gets Syracuse in? Do you think 2 will be enough?
I think 2 will be enough, but they have to be 2 quality wins. They have to beat some pretty good opponents. I think if they get matched up with Duke and they're able to beat Duke, That would be definitely a good win. They get matched up with Florida State, and they will play that team in the next round, and they're able to beat them. That I think that obviously gets them in.
And look, you're supposed to look at the whole thing, and it's a weird resume as it is this year because of COVID pauses and uneven amount of games. But I'm sorry, the committee, they are human beings that have recency bias, and that will stick in their mind. If you can beat a top seed in the ACC tournament, that will get you over the hump. That means your resume is good enough at this point. So,
yeah,
I'm not a big fan of that, by the way. I don't like that things come down to conference tournaments, but this year it's different because you didn't have the number of games you usually do. I'm usually somebody, Mike, that says, look, you've had 4 months to make your resume. 4 days at a conference tournament should not determine that. It's a little different now, though, because of the pauses, the uneven amount of games, and the quad system. Look, if they say you got to have these quad 1 wins, and Syracuse still does not, we mentioned that a moment ago. But if you get one, and that's what gets you over the hump between a bubble team, first 4 out, first 4 in, hey, so be it. That's the system. You can only play by the rules.
Yeah, I think that's just like the NBA when a player makes a big run towards the end of the season, everybody want to say he's the MVP. But what did he do the first 4 months of the season? But yeah, that's definitely a good point. But I do want to bring up one more thing.
Sure.
What's going on with Jim Boeheim lately and him attacking reporters?
This is something new. This has been going on as long as I can remember. Jim took a shot at, I believe our friend Matthew Gutierrez was the target of his ire this time around because Matt had taken some direct criticisms at Jim about particularly Jesse Edwards. You know, I think Jim spins a wheel before he goes into his press conference sometimes and let's see who it lands on tonight and goes after them. But, you know, not surprised to say the least. I was in his line of fire a couple of weeks ago. And we'll see who's next on that because there's been a lot of doubters about his team, and now he might have the upper hand here if this team keeps winning and gets in the tournament.
Yeah, I think I'm taking it back just because it was a short joke.
Christian says JB loves telling you guys how smart he is. That too. Yeah. You gotta stick up for those short guys out there. I don't know where I qualify there. I'm 5'10", so I'm kind of in the middle there. I'm in between.
I don't know what Iris means. She said, "Stop, Mike."
We don't want you to get in Boeheim's line of fire.
There we go.
That's why she's saying that, right?
Yeah. Reporters give Coach crap. He gives it back, and you're taking it back.
Hey, listen, it's a two-way road, right? We write, we criticize, we say what we got to say, and that's his press conference. That's his forum, and on the game goes. And it's been one Jim's been playing ever since he took over as head coach, and we'll keep going forever and ever. And that's a good note to end on tonight. So kind of a weird schedule from here on out, folks. We'll be here after every Syracuse game, but it's all one and done from here on out. So watch the game. Syracuse wins, we'll be here. Syracuse loses, we'll be here for that game, and then we'll wait out until they get to the tournament. So we will be here after every Syracuse game remaining. We just don't know what that schedule looks like at this point. So keep an eye out for that. We'll, of course, keep you updated on syracuse.com. Thanks for watching us live, but just a reminder, this does go up on our Syracuse Orange Sports YouTube page, and embedded in my recap, it also goes up on social media. Very easy to find if you can't watch us live. And we appreciate everybody that's been here throughout the season. It was awesome adding Mike to the show, and we got it on YouTube and added a couple different elements. We changed the graphics and everything, and we've been really enjoying doing this, and we'll keep doing it through the postseason. We just don't know how many shows we have left here. So thank you tonight, Mike. Appreciate it, and we'll see you next time, whenever that is. Looks like next Wednesday we'll be back at it, but don't know what time quite yet.
Yeah, looking forward to it, man. It's been a great season.
Thanks, everybody.